We got a book called Anatomy of a Setup. And it tells all the ways that inmates will manipulate you and try to set you up into doing something you don't want to do. And once you do it, they own you. They're going to try to mess with you. It's happened. You could get piss thrown at you or feces or something, You're going to see some outlandish things. One of my buddies, he got stabbed with a fork in a chow hall by an inmate. And then my other buddy jumped in and he got stuck with it. And it was just a big battle royal in the chow hall. I think I got a tetanus shot because of him, because he raked all the skin off my forearm one time I was fighting with him. Oh, man. Cell phone in someone's rectum. A cell phone. Flip phone. Not a mini one. This guy was a pro.
And on today's show is Tom, former corrections officer. How are you doing today, sir?
Very good. I'm in coastal Maine today, and it is a beautiful, beautiful day. Thank you for having me on.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for coming on. If you could just basically tell us, a few paragraphs or less, what does a corrections officer do?
Most people think we're just locking doors and watching inmates, but really we're kind of running a little city, if you will. The reality is we're responsible for safety, security, crisis management, communication, intelligence gathering, managing human behavior, really. On any given day, you're part law enforcement, you're part social worker, you're part counselor, you're part dad, to guys who's never had one.
And so for you personally, how did you end up becoming a corrections officer?
I'd gotten out of the Marine Corps. This was the early 90s. And the economy was terrible, absolutely terrible. And I didn't really have any skills. I was in Ordnance in the Marine Corps. I could build bombs, rockets, and missiles and that kind of thing. But coming back to Manchester, New Hampshire, there wasn't much calling for that. So I was a bouncer. I was a security guard at a hospital. And I needed something steady with benefits. And I saw an article in the newspaper. The state prison was hiring 35 correctional officers. And I had tried to get a couple of police jobs, but it was a big waiting list and it was just hard to get in. So I'll apply for that, just something to do. And seems interesting. And, a couple of my brothers have been in prison, so they're still alive. So I put in for that. And I also applied for a county correctional place department. And I'm like, well, whoever calls me first, I'll join up with them. And the state called me first. So yeah, needed a job.
Don't we all? All right. Let's say day one, someone becomes a corrections officer. What's something that might make someone say, ho, I'm out of here. I'm not digging this.
Simply, you're locked in. You can't get out. Unless someone from a control room hits a button and opens the door and lets you out. You're locked in with a lot of people who don't want to be there. None of them want to be there. Or guys just, cat calling you because they know you're a new guy. You got a trainee hat. This is how they did it in the state prison. You got a trainee hat and you walk around and you do these little jobs until you start at the academy.
It's like a target on your head.
Yeah. You're it. So they're gonna try to mess with you. That sort of thing. So, and then it's happened. You could get piss thrown at you or feces or something, You're going to see some outlandish things.
Okay. Well, that sounds pretty awful. So what are the repercussions for a prisoner who throws piss at a guard, for instance?
Well, they would go to, they'd be put in segregation. They'd be housed alone away from the general population. If they did that in general population, if they just lost their mind and did that. But then a lot of them in that do that are already in there in segregation or a solitary type of environment. So for those guys that are already there, well, I mean, they get a disciplinary report, but they probably got stacks of them anyway. And they would just have to remain there, really. And if they did do that, they're cuffed. We go in on them. They're cuffed, put down. Everything's removed from their cell, and they're basically standing there naked. They may, if they behave, get a paper suit, but Yeah, that's how you got to be, because you can't have any. We don't want them to have anything that they can use, even to harm themselves. And then they may talk to someone through the vent or their slot, like from mental health, obviously, or see what's going on.
Wow. What about workplace horror stories? Have you ever observed anything that affected your coworkers?
One of my buddies, and he was my lifting partner for years at the gym, but he got stabbed with a fork in a chow hall by an inmate, and then my other buddy jumped in, and he got stuck with it, and it was just a big battle royal in the chow hall. Um, God, there's so many things, and I was involved. I was a magnet for this stuff. It just wherever I was, it was like wrong place, right time. Um, and in the DOC, New Hampshire DOC will reward you handsomely. They will promote you if you're in those kind of incidents, and you do apply for a promotion. They see that you can handle it.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, would you say what percentage of days would you say are completely not eventful versus things
Um,
going down in there?
yeah, uneventful. Well, I was in the state prison for 8 years before I went over to probation parole. Um, and 5 of them were in the max unit. And then another 2, one was in general population, really. And then the other 2 were in the secure psychiatric unit. So another crazy place. But yeah, there was a lot on a daily there in those 2 places, especially the secure psychiatric unit. But in general population, it's like like I said, a city and a culture in its own. People are doing a lot of time, and they just want their day to go on. They have changed in a way. They go to the gym or the weight room. They're involved in hobbycraft. They go to church. They go to classes, and they don't want to get written up for things because they lose privileges, and they start over. So a lot of them just do their thing, you know?
Okay. Would you
So yeah,
say,
it's pretty quiet sometimes.
yeah.
Yeah.
So well, you mentioned max security, you mentioned the psych unit. So now I'm
Hmm.
thinking, depending on where your corrections officer at, could very much affect the answer to that last question also. So I would imagine there's some places you could try to get to as a correction officer where it's easy. You got all these white
Hmm.
collar guys just playing
Yeah.
cards all day versus these people who are in lifers, and
Hmm.
have nothing to lose. So, I
Yeah.
mean, how would how would someone affect that? How could a corrections officer get to places they'd rather be, or do some people want to be in maximum security? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I wanted to be. And, I was young and my buddies were there and we all worked out together. And it was a enclosed unit. We didn't have to wear our uniform shirts. We wore this T-shirt. And you walk around with a big vest on, like a stab kind of vest, stab proof. Yeah, and it was just kind of, yeah, I work in shoe, It was kind of a statusy thing. And a lot of us were in the SERT team, special emergency response team. So yeah, we like those highs and lows.
Yeah.
Um, but then they came up with a time limit, like a year and a half for the max custody for shoe. So you did a year and a half. You try to linger a little longer, but then you had to get out. And they one time, my buddy and me, the same time, were put in a very very slow unit, basically a sex offender unit for old grandpa sex offenders, pedophiles. And they just did their thing. They didn't really get in trouble. They just superficially compliant. They just dreamed of having little kids on their lap. That's what basically they did. But they were listening. They wouldn't give me any shit. And it was boring as hell. So that's when I decided I'm getting promoted and I'm going back to shoe.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I get it. So the special emergency response team, what's that like? What's that about?
Yeah. It's pretty much what you would think. We're all black, BDUs, real military looking outfits. And we come in during disturbances. One time we came in for a riot, but a lot of it is like mass searches. We would come in 4 o'clock in the morning and just tear a unit apart. Everyone's out of bed, they're cuffed, they're against the wall, and we're going through there. Maybe we got information that there's someone's hiding a bunch of Shanks, which are homemade knives, or someone's got shitload of drugs, or just keep them on their toes, like, hey, we're in charge here, not you guys, So we would do a lot of that.
Okay.
And then when we did train a good amount. We get to shoot a lot more than your average CO who just basically qualifies every year with a handgun and a rifle and a shotgun. We did all kinds of stuff, really.
What about permanent physical marks, scars, injuries, habits, tattoos, anything like that from your past?
Yeah. Well, I wrecked my back pretty good when I was a young CO at the Max unit. Didn't require surgery, but I was out a little bit. I was out for like a week and just kind of fixed it. I was young. I basically wrong place, right time again, walking by a tier, and there's a day room in front of the tier. It's all glass. And all the guys are, inmates were all like standing in front of the glass, like weird. And they're like blocking something. So I'm like, what are these guys doing? So I go in there, I call control. They open the sliding door, then it's got to close. Then it'll pop the day room door. I go in, and these two guys are going at it. One guy's slashing his kid in the face with a knife. Big white dude, bank robber. He was a high profile kind of guy, and he was slashing his kid in the face, a little Hispanic kid. And the Hispanic kid was fighting pretty good. I jumped in, shitload of inmates, and then the rest of them came, but I got the knife knocked down, but I landed bad and fucked my back up. And that's kind of gone. That's gone away, I suppose. But then when I went back into corrections years later to Essex County, Massachusetts, I tore my tricep. So I got a scar here under these tattoos. I got a tattoo over it. I had to get it reattached because it curled up. I landed bad on a concrete with a guy on top of me. There was a big disturbance in a unit. We went there and had canines there and all this stuff. And it's like, I just felt it curl up like, oh shit, So yeah, that one, that's still kind of there. And I think it led to my bicep tearing. I had that reattached after I retired, and that came back. So that was like flat for a long time.
Wow.
Yeah, and I had the rotator done later. So this poor left side, carpal tunnel.
So you're just using your right arm now for everything.
Yeah, pretty much, pretty much. No, I said I can still lift pretty heavy and I work out all the time, because, I own a wellness clinic. You got to work out. So got to be.
And that's the name, right? Is that the name there? Cutting Edge?
Yeah. Testosterone Therapy. Just opened up state of Maine office. We have one in New Hampshire too.
Well, tell us. I mean, what is it about? What do you guys do?
Well, testosterone replacement therapy for men and women. We started out as just men, and then guys would get themselves fixed, their hormones, and they bring their wife in for their follow-up appointment. She wants to do something because she can't keep up with this guy now. He didn't touch her for a year before. Yeah, no, serious. Yeah. And so we got into that. It was me and my wife. She's a medical provider. Almost 6 years later, we have 6,000 clients, and 2 offices in 2 states, and we got clients all over the country.
Has being a corrections officer affected your life outside of work in any way, or your relationships with other people?
Absolutely. Yeah, trust. You don't trust people. Maybe you analyze them, you meet someone, you think they're cool, especially when you're a young single guy. You meet this girl through a friend or at a club, like, oh, she's cool. And then you find out her brother's been incarcerated. Or a big one was she was on the visit list. That's a no-no. Cannot date people on a visit list back in the day. Just not a good thing. You got to break up with them. So that sort of thing. You're hypervigilant. So that can affect things. Your head's on a swivel. But really it's the the trust issue. And he kind of it turns into like a little pack mentality. Whereas that's who you hang out with, with guys from the prison. And we used to go work out together. We go to clubs together. We were bouncers on the side together when it wasn't any overtime. We'd bounce at clubs and hang out. And yeah.
Yeah. What percentage of your coworkers would you say were former military?
Very big percentage. Because they get to step ahead of the line a lot of places. As far as hiring, because they get the discipline thing. And so when I went into corrections in the early 90s, a lot of people were getting out of military. They were like kicking people out, just like, all right, we got too much of a, that's when they're kind of ending the Cold War buildup, and guys with a lot of time or some time in were getting out and they need jobs. So who's going to hire you? You're a gun guy. Who's going to hire you?
Right.
And they're going to hire you quicker than being a cop, because there was this wasn't that much demand for cops at the time.
Yeah. My cousin was special weapons operations or something like that in the Marines. And I'm like, what are you going to do with that when you get out? And it turns out it had no use. And now, I mean, he's a crane operator now, which is great. But
good money.
Yeah. But it didn't translate into that. That was where the family was. So
no, you either went into a gun manufacturing place or factory if they had jobs. But you were going to corrections.
So you worked at some facilities, I guess, where family members were incarcerated alongside people you were supervising. Is that true?
Yeah, that was me. Yeah, I was a new guy at the state prison in my 20s. And I worked at reception and diagnostics, right? That was my first unit. And that is the basically receiving unit where new guys come in after court, they send us to prison and they get their medical, checks and blah, blah, blah. And then they figure out classifications, figure out where they're going to put them. So they're all there and all kinds of disarray, or guys that are brought back on parole violations will go there and they're a mess. So I was working there, doing rounds one day, and I see these two dudes. They'd have these trunks, right? They keep their stuff in while they put them out on a tier when it was tier time. And they play cards on it. And as I'm walking by, that's my brother, my younger brother, who's 2 years younger than me. He was John, I'm Tom. And he's playing cards with this dude. And I'm like, what in the fuck? And so he's like, I go by him. He looks at me, kind of smirks. He didn't say anything. And I just continued doing my rounds. And I'm like, I better tell someone about this. This is kind of a big deal. He was on parole at the time. He had done prison time. He must have got brought back by his parole officer. He's always in trouble. And so I go downstairs, go to the lieutenant's office, who I've never met. I am brand new. And he's in, yeah. And he was a great guy. His name was Jerry. And I said, hey, he goes, oh, hey, how you doing? What do you need? Who are you? I'm like, yeah, I'm Casey, and this is, I work here now. Oh, okay, yeah, cool, man. What do you need? You all right? And I said, well, my brother's upstairs. I think I gotta tell you and write a report. That's what they just, gotta write reports about stuff. And he's like, your brother works here? Oh, cool. All right, yeah, great. And I said, no, he's an inmate. He's upstairs. He's like, oh, fuck. Okay. All right. We got to get the sergeant in there, another good dude. And they figure it out. Okay, just stay down here for a minute. Okay. And we looked alike, me and my brother. So, yeah. And then the inmates caught on because of the same name. And yeah, so that was my induction so now everyone knows who I am. The guy with the brother. And
so,
yeah.
Yeah. So first of all, so you didn't know he was coming there?
No.
He didn't tell you?
No, we weren't terribly close.
Okay.
No, me and my brothers aren't. No.
Okay. And then when you first saw him, he didn't say anything to you. And I would assume that's because he probably doesn't want the rest of the inmates knowing that his brother is one of the guards. But it still came out. Would that be a fair assessment?
Yeah, because a guy came up to me, and I would hope that was his mindset, but he was smirking at me like, I'm going to get something out of you. That was his thing. He was very manipulative. Yeah. Yeah. He was just, honestly, he was just no good, man. Honestly, from day one. But this black dude came up to me out in rec or something when they were out in the yard. And he said, "Hey, Casey, you look like that guy upstairs, man. That's your brother, isn't it?" And he put two and two together because they're not dumb. You know, they figure shit out. And yeah, cat was out of the bag.
So how did it affect him?
They took him out of there and sent him up north to another prison up in Laconia, New Hampshire. And he did some time up there. He had a parole violation pending. Probably didn't, give him that long of a setback or something, and out he went. So it probably helped him. Yeah, they're always in trouble. My oldest brother went to prison in Texas. He was down there for a while. My middle brother, my brother Kevin, he's 7 years older than me. He committed suicide at 49. He hadn't been in a state prison, but, he just couldn't get the hang of life, after he was in the Navy. He was a Navy corpsman, attached to the Marines for years and got out. But he had a terrible, terrible childhood. My dad used him basically as a punching bag. He was a hyperactive kid. And my dad couldn't control it. And he just beat his ass all the time, beat him. And I think eventually he cracked. He may even been molested, not by my dad, but something happened to him. He was just an off-center kid. He killed himself at 49. Yeah. And then my sister's a nurse, so she's cool. It's me and her, all in the same house.
Well, you say you have all these brothers and such with that went to prison. I've never said it before on the show, but my dad spent most of his life in prison in Texas for
Texas
low-level drug. Yeah. Well, don't mess with Texas, right?
Yeah. How'd you make it? You must have had a great mom.
Yeah, she took over. Yeah, we moved. But he always used to, I'm curious what you have to say about this quote. He always used to say to me, he would say, when I'm in prison, there's a lot of people that they don't need to be there. But there's some people that really need to be there.
Yeah, I agree totally. I do. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Some of the guys, we as a society failed. You say their parents failed. It's generational. Mickey Mouse, nickel and dime stuff they do, and it just keeps escalating. And then the drugs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Is there any one specific person or situation that you remember from your work that you still think about occasionally?
Yeah, actually, and this brought it back, but it never really left me. I was in a situation where there's going to be a bit of a story. So I was in the prison about 3 years, and we were all, the guys I ran were, big drinkers, right? Just drink. And I brought that over from the Marine Corps. Not their fault. I was overseas a lot for most of my Marine Corps 4 years. I was overseas about over 3. And I was just drinking a lot. And I got a DUI. So 3 years into the prison, I'm doing good. I'm working max unit shoe. I got a DUI. Shit, on my day off. Guy I went to high school was the cop. It wasn't his fault. I was hammered. I was right near my house. And he got me. So I had to go to work and tell them. And I reported it. And they're like, okay, well, you're a good CO, correctional officer. We'll talk to the warden. And I had to go to internal affairs and all this stuff. We'll just see what happens at court. Just make sure, because he pulled my license, just make sure you get to work every day. Get to work. Don't call it sick. Just get here. Don't make a big deal. Just stop drinking. And I did. So that led into doing around, letting guys out for, I was letting guys out for yard on one of the tiers and shoot. All right. They all come out. Call the control room. They open the doors. One guy runs out and stabs a guy in the head with a shank right in front of me, right in the forehead. Pop. And I'm there like, oh, shit. And things kind of just slowed down, slow down and go fast. That was kind of our thing. And I put him behind me, bunch of inmates out, max guys, and the vest on by myself. And started fighting. This guy goes, I'm going to get you too, motherfucker. And he's swinging like this. That Shank's sticking out here. And I'm doing this and got him and fighting him and put him against the wall. Shank falls. I hear the door sliding and the rest of the guys come and put everyone away and help me get this fucker down. And yeah. So that was done. And then I come out and then I got to talk to everybody. My unit manager, the warden, internal affairs, investigators. And one of them said, his name was Donnie, and he was a good dude for internal affairs. He was a good guy. Yeah, they all were. They were cool. And he said, man, you're not in trouble anymore. I said, what? You know your little thing? I said, yeah. He goes, you're a fucking hero. You're going to get a medal out of this or something. You're all set. I said, well, I wasn't looking to do that, man. So, funny. So anyways, I ended up getting promoted. I put in for promotions and that kind of thing. And, it's funny that leads into the, I'll get to the award ceremony later, but it's funny. 20 years later, I go back into correction after I retired. I'm in Essex County. I'm a CO again at 47 years old, 47, 48. I'm doing count. You always do count in correction. You're always counting these guys. And this dude's up in his door. He's got the, metal screen thing. He goes, hey, man, remember me? And he points at his forehead. And I look, this fucker had a hole in his head, like a scar thing. And I'm like, holy shit, Joe. And, and I'm like, oh. So like I saw a ghost. I'm like, hey, man, I got to do count. I'll talk to you later. I got you, sergeant, motherfucker. Yeah. So I finished count. I didn't know what to say. I was like, what the fuck? Do I got to do a report about this shit? I don't know. And all those years, those 20 years, I had hoped that young Joe, this was the crossroads that he needed, getting stabbed in the head in the max unit, that he lived a great life, became an accountant or something, and had a wonderful family in this. Nope. Still in the system. He's in a Massachusetts system now. Yeah, so the award ceremony. So what happened after that incident? I got promoted and went to another unit for a little bit. And then they called me into the office with a couple of other guys. And detective guys there from the state police, our major, Joe Guyman, good guy, and the warden, and a few big ones. I'm like, fuck, what do we do now? What do we do? We didn't do anything. What are we here for? And they said, all right, here's the thing. We got this guy, and he's a witness. You're going to be witness protection. You're going to protect this guy. It's going to be off grounds. You can't talk to any one of your buddies anymore. Can't hang around anyone from the prison anymore. You want to do it? I said, yeah, fuck it. Let's go. I'm down. And so we were posing as graduate students from Dartmouth. That was the thing. And we'd wear regular clothes. We had a gun, but it was concealed. And we went to this old state building office. It was this decrepit office. It used to be an insane asylum, like the state hospital ground. It was on the state hospital grounds. It's this old spooky place with birds flying around in it and shit everywhere and whatever. And they cleaned up an area of it and put this guy, his name was Tom. And what he did was, there was this murder. This terrible, terrible murder. Well, they all are, but these two elderly ladies, they were sisters. They lived together. These guys broke it. No, they didn't break in. They befriended them. You say, hey, we'll help you out. We'll cut your grass and all that shit. You're landscaping or something for them. And they beat the bag out of them and killed them both. So one of them was a suspect, and he was locked up in the Valley Street Jail. Correct. Hillsborough County Department of Corrections. So they took this prison inmate who was very manipulative, very wily, and I think he's done this before. And they put him in a cell with this guy down in the county, and he was wired. And back then the wires were bulky. I don't know how he pulled it off. And there's like a state police guy on the roof with an antenna trying to get some reception, and he got a confession out of the guy. He basically got him to confess. So in the meantime, they had to get this Tom guy, put him somewhere, and he couldn't go anywhere. The word spread. So they put him in this safe house, and we watched him. And it was great. It was a great gig because I was in school at the time to get my degree, bachelor's degree. And so I would do schoolwork all night. I was working third shift with him, and Tom would watch videos. He'd watch, he'd watch movies and whatever. We'd hang out and talk, and he was fine. He had a good gig too. So one night I go in, shift change, see my buddies off from second shift, and the warden was there, deputy of security, whatever his title was, and some other people, and me and Tom, the inmate, and they had my Medal of Honor. I got the Medal of Honor because I couldn't go to the ceremony because I wasn't supposed to be around people. So I got presented with this Medal of Honor. It's a very nice plaque thing, and it's a little purple ribboned medal. And yeah, that was my audience. And Tom, the inmate, sitting there, and he had to put Donnie Brasco on pause. He was watching that. And yeah, that was it. The pigeons gave us a break. They went back down the hall, and so yeah, that was
Neat. Very cool. What about big mistakes? Have you ever made any big mistakes at work?
I had my finger, this one, my little pinky finger broken. So I didn't pay attention, basically, in the max unit. It got busted up in a like a food slot an inmate got it, whacked it. I didn't report it. My buddies were cool and whatever. And it's just fucking out, and I'm like, you motherfucker, but because I wasn't paying attention. So I put that on me. You know what I mean? It's like you take things for granted. You're always going to pay attention. And
Wait, so
turn my face and yeah.
So your finger is in a something, and then
we were doing
hits
feeds. Yeah. I think I'm trying to think back. He hit it with something or he kicked it. And it ended up being broken. But it didn't really smart until like a couple days later or the next day.
And you don't beat his ass? Like, I mean, what the hell?
Well, eventually I think he got his. I think eventually, but not at the time. No. Nope. He yeah, he got his. Just say.
Okay.
Yeah. But you gotta be like strategic about it.
Yeah. I'd be pissed. Like, what? I mean, had you done anything to this guy, or is you just like, I'm just gonna just mess with this CO? I mean, what?
Probably. On a day-to-day, it's like some banter. They'll say you yell shit, you fucking yell shit back, and we just kind of laughing. And so, no, I mean, I was like, fuck, I fucked up. The guy was a nut anyway. He was just a banana. He was like, 3 days later, he's in an observation room painting himself with shit. He was that kind of guy. So he was out of his mind. That was a regular thing in that unit. So, yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah. So we had hoses in the hall, in the area, where the isolation type areas. And it was a day room. You just walk by doing your rounds, and there he is naked in the corner, pasted with shit. And you just leave him there. And you hose him off a couple, once or twice a day. If he does it again, fucking hose him off, and then you bring out the restraint. It's a little cot with 4 points. He goes in that, toss him in that, tie him up, and sits there until mental health talks to him, and and they decide that okay, he's still crazy, and he's sitting in there for it's not punishment, it's to save him from himself. But
so how often would you say? I know a lot of states have gotten rid of, they don't have the state mental hospitals, or at least they're very limited at this point. So
yeah,
what percentage of prisoners in incarceration probably should be in a mental hospital as opposed to in prison? Like this is, it's almost like you're a backup for the mental hospital for some people, I would imagine.
Yeah, I think it was the 70s. They started emptying those places in the U.S. And shutting them down, and a lot of them for good reason. A lot of them were torture chambers, really. Just look it up. But then they're on the streets. They're wandering around and they get into some kind of shenanigans and it just kind of escalates. You know, they might go to a county jail and then they spit in someone's face and they get a charge, or they attack a CO, or they're in society and they do a rape or get a kid, do something nuts. And so the percentage is probably pretty high. And then they got the guys that just grew up, in criminality, and they were on every medication there was because they're hyperactive or something, and they just didn't have a great home life. And so you could call them, say they have mental health issues. The amount of medication that is dispensed at these places is just impressive. It really is. Just to keep them from keeping the place quiet, keeping them somewhat sane, because you do med lines. Like in Max Unit, you go down to tiers, all the tiers with a nurse, and they give meds out. County jail, you have a med line, and for general population guys. And you're the nurse there with a big cart, and you're standing there watching, and then they do mouth checks after they take their pills, and they do this, and you check. All right, man, beat it, Next. Because they cheat their pills, and they'll sell them or give them to a buddy or someone strong-arming them, telling them, hey, man, cheat that shit. So I want them. Because they're on a lot of them are on psychotropic meds.
Yeah, no, I'll be honest with you. I assumed that the prisons generally didn't give out a lot of medicine, like sorry you have this problem, but now it sounds like it's the opposite. At least for the keeping them calm kind of a thing.
Yeah, medical is a big that is a big expense for departments of corrections. It really is. Yeah. I gotta say all of them are on stuff, but like in Essex County, a place I left, they have a methadone clinic in the walls now.
I mean, I guess that's probably a good thing. I mean, so in the past, people would come in and they were, daily users of insert drug name right now, and then
fentanyl, and
now they're in and they're having to just shake it, on their bed, and they're going through withdrawals. But the methadone thing would allow that to.
Okay. Yeah, they come in and they're just a hot mess. Just really, you see, it's you witness human suffering. Now, and my mindset's different now that I've been removed from that, and I'm in the wellness field, and dabbled in medically assisted psychedelics. That has changed a lot of my thinking. But and I was a counselor at a methadone clinic too. So there are people, and you are dependent on that stuff. I wish they weren't on it forever. And I hope that's the case. You go there with a 2-year pill habit and you're on the shit for 11 years. But yeah, it's the reality of it. I don't think the jail wants to have a unit like that where you got to, but it's just.
See if you have an answer for this. Can you tell us about a time that you learned why a certain unwritten rule exists in your job?
There's one. You can like them, but don't trust them. You can respect them, but don't trust them. Is that in any rule book? I haven't seen it, but there's that. And then going back to being a young correctional officer out in the dating scene, you can't hang around the family members of an inmate. You just can't. I don't know if there's a specific rule, but it's kind of a rule. Also, another one is it all kind of goes towards this book we had when we were brand new in the academy. We got a book called Anatomy of a Setup. And it tells all the ways that inmates will manipulate you or try to set you up into doing something you don't want to do. And once you do it, they own you. For instance, when my brother was incarcerated another time, my younger brother, he did a number of years. Kind of like life on the installment plan, but not really life, but a long time. My mother, God rest her soul, was so my parents had us, me and my younger brother, older. So they were worn out by the time he came around. And so they just gave in to him. They were burnt. And she was all into his visiting him at prison and all that shit. And she asked me one time, hey, can you bring him some sneakers? And I'm like, Mom, I can't bring him shit. I don't even talk to him. I don't look at him. I can't. It's not how this works. Yeah, but he's your brother. You know, I can't do it. And I tried to explain it to her. She didn't get it. So I didn't do it anyway, obviously. Because you can't bring shit from the outside into him. Could I have? Oh, there would have been a way. But I would have been the first suspect, for one. And two, it just wasn't the way my mindset was at the time.
Yeah.
So, I don't know if that's written or unwritten, but no, it's probably a written one. But
So you started by saying that the anatomy of the setup.
Yeah.
How often would you say you felt like someone was trying to set you up?
I could honestly, I think growing up the way I grew up, I could tell right away. Plus how I carried myself. And here's a couple of things. And I'll never forget this. And he told us this in the academy. They told us this story about a cop in Texas. And we had an inmate who was from Texas. And that goes into like transfer of inmates and stuff. Certain states will trade inmates. This guy's a bad guy. Let's send him to New Hampshire. New Hampshire will send some asshole down to them. You know what I mean? And hopefully the environment works out for them. But this inmate we had, called him Tex, and he shot a cop in Texas and killed him. And asked Tex, why'd you think you could take him? Why'd you think you could outgun him? You know, he goes, well, I looked at his uniform and he was fat and his uniform wasn't pressed and his boots weren't shined. So I knew he wasn't in shape. He didn't practice what he did for a job. And I never forgot that. So I think guys didn't approach me. One, I was always in shape. You know, I was drinking and partying, early on. I was always in shape, lifted, and my uniform was always pressed, starched, and my boots were always spit shined. So was it mandatory you spit shined? No, I did it. Was it mandatory you starch uniform? No, but I did it. I always had a haircut, shave. Didn't have any growth. Never got talked to about it. And so I never got asked to bring shit in, anything like that.
So, interesting. So carrying yourself, you carried yourself in a physical way. I would imagine there's some other things too, how you carried yourself. What would you recommend to another person, brand new CEO, for instance? How would you recommend, besides the way they dress, that they might need to carry themselves as to not be, anatomy of a setup?
Yeah. Walk with your head up. And I remember this. We were walking with this old time sergeant, Eddie. Call him Eddie. That was his name. And he'd been there forever, 30 years or something, right? Had a cigar. That's when you could smoke in the place. And it's me and this other new guy walking. He's walking with us, and he's looking, and he did a double take at the guy we were with, the other guy. He goes, hey, lift your head up. You walk in here with your head up, and you look around. Don't walk around here with your head down. That goes to that. And he explained it that you have to see things, but it also shows you might be a little scared of something. You got to look them in the eye, because they're always trying to stare you down when you're new. Always.
Interesting. When we had the interview with Mike Morgan, he did talk about out in the real world, getting in fights with people on the street who just that look like they're looking at him, he's looking at them, and it's like they're trying to test you, even outside.
Yeah. Yeah. Same thing. Same guys,
Right.
About the unwritten rules. And I don't know why I didn't even think of this, but basically don't be a snitch. Don't be a rat. Unless it is something like, someone's dirty. Bringing stuff in contraband, that sort of thing.
Who should not be a snitch against who? I'm a little, who you
Officers.
talking? What would an officer, okay, so let's say an officer's not a snitch.
Yep.
What are they not saying about officers that would matter?
Just like little things, like especially nowadays, like a guy, like you're telling on another officer for like swearing at an inmate or doing, some minimal thing, right? Like a tattletale kind of guy. Now, a good tell is you find out, someone's bringing contraband in for an inmate. A cell phone, tobacco, a drug, whatever. Someone's dirty. And then another one is you don't talk personal with them.
You don't talk personal with who?
Inmates. You don't share personal things.
Oh, you don't tell them personal stuff about yourself.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So
Okay.
that was like the hard part for me because my brother was in the system, and his buddies were in there and they knew who I was. So they would yell out things. Hey, Tom, how's your brother doing? That kind of shit. Half-asking, half being a dildo, that kind of thing.
All right. So this next part is basically, I went and found questions that people have about COs or even beliefs, and you can react to them in any way you want. So the first one is, some people say corrections officers are basically just babysitters with badges, that it's not actual law enforcement. What's your opinion on that?
I had to laugh. I get a laugh about that one. It's like, sort of, but really, anyone who's ever been inside there, wouldn't say that. But like I said, you're kind of running a little community of bad dudes, so I don't know who came up with that, but I'm sorry.
Sorry. Sounds like you disagree. It's fine.
Yeah. No, it's
All right.
It's more than that. Yeah.
Okay. Well, how about this? Some people say that prisons don't actually rehabilitate, that they just basically make people worse people.
Yeah.
As someone who's been on the inside, what do you think about that?
Well, what I would say is I think there's opportunities for guys, even if you're doing forever. And it's up to them to take advantage, like anywhere or anybody. There's so much programming in places now. If you, one, stay out of the hole, stay out of trouble, there's classes you can take. There's programming so you can get your head on straight. And there was a saying, if a guy didn't believe in the programming, hey, fake it till you make it, dude. So you get that certificate that you can bring to the parole board and show them so you can get out. Yeah, I've heard that before, and maybe a part of me or my old self would say, it's probably right. It's kind of gladiator school some places, but there's opportunity there, and you just really have to resist the pressures, and they get them, to get into some shenanigans, but there's opportunity to better yourself.
So would you say that for most facilities, then, if you really want to turn your life around, the ability is there, and for when you get out, if you're going to get out?
Yes.
Okay.
I would say so.
What percentage of guys do you think take advantage of that? Or not in a negative way. I mean, take advantage of it in a positive.
Oh, yeah. I think a lot of them do, from my experience. Okay. Honestly, those are the ones you really don't hear about. We deal with, like SERT teams and max custody places, those type of things. You deal with the bad of the bad, but the majority of them are just trying to get out, and like, shit. All right, maybe this is it. I'm going to figure this out. Right. And, the stress, the pressure and the stress is out there too. They get some. Yeah, my hope for them is they get a little stronger to resist these things, on the outside. But inside, it's, yeah,
Yeah. I mean, I've heard on TV shows and movies occasionally they'll say that somebody is they're this person is happier in prison, or they're more comfortable in prison than dealing with the real world. Would you say that that's impossible? I mean, is there anybody that
Well,
lives like that?
yeah, yeah.
Really?
Guys doing long sentences, and they're very old. They've nowhere to go. Where are they going to go? They get to the county nursing home. Um, they get no family. They're an old pedophile, for instance, and they've lived a long time, as much as they don't want to live. Some of them, and they find their little. They just have a life in there where they have their little buddies, and they go to like hobby craft and make things. They have no family visiting them, so their family is in there, and they'll maybe talk to a CO about, hey, did you watch the game last night? Yeah, I watched it. Okay, you have that stuff goes on all day. You know, but yeah, there's guys that are just basically grown up in there. They went in there younger, and even first I said old guys, but now the guy went in there very young. Now he's 37, 45, 50. Um, and I've seen them when those kind of guys parole out. They're a young guy and he did a murder and he did 18, 20 years. They get out in their late 30s, early 40s, and they're a kid. They're still a kid. It's tough to adapt. They'll have people helping them initially, the church or some family, maybe mom's still alive, that sort of thing. But then that all fades, and then they're kind of, yeah, they're that young, dumb guy still and working a shit job in a kitchen, being a dish dog, washing dishes, living in a rooming house that sucks with a bunch of other guys on parole. There's a number of those places. And their life sucks. You're trying to get a girlfriend. What's your opener?
Yeah. Yeah. So as you
Your
see guys
resume's empty.
leaving,
Your resume is
right.
got a big space.
So when you see a guy leaving the prison, is it pretty easy for you to look at him and say, yeah, that one's definitely, he'll be back versus, oh, he's going to stay out. He'll do all right.
Yeah. And he'll come back very skinny. Yeah. And when I was a parole officer, you saw that. You just like, oh, geez, he's out. I remember him. And it's been his 5th time out. But, they could give him another shot, right? And he said the right things at the parole board or whatever. Just time to get out. And but yeah, you just know guys aren't ready. And it's the way they talk. They're like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and you're going to do this, and you're not supposed to do this because you got rules of parole.
Right.
So yeah, you can tell.
Do you have any idea what someone makes as a corrections officer when they begin, middle, towards the end of their career, and how is that affected by state and state prisons and federal, and
Yeah.
what do you think?
When I went to Essex County, there was pretty good money. I think it started at like 60,000, and then on, like, we haven't even talked about this, but stupid overtime, just ridiculous overtime.
Like time and a half?
Yeah. I made one year I made almost 150,000. And it was mostly forced overtime. Like, you're going out the door and they're like, hey, your turn, stay. And here I am in my late 40s. Yeah.
So 6 days a week, are we talking a lot of times?
I was in Essex County for the first 3 years. I was on a 4 and 2 before I got promoted.
So 4 10s?
4 8s. 4 8s. So it's 4 on, 2 off. And it just kind of evened out at the end of the month that you had 80 hours each pay period.
Oh, so you had a 6-day week, so to speak.
Yeah.
4 and then 2 and then 4. Oh, so your days off changed each week.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I had 3 kids, and I have 3 kids, and they were very active at the time. So it was a little rough on the family, but you always had a weekend off once in a while. But yeah, just the overtime was insane. One pay period, it was 2 weeks, 2-week pay periods. I had over 100 hours just in overtime.
Wow.
And it was forced overtime, and I did hospitals, so that'd be a little longer than 8 hours, maybe 10 hours. And then I'd go home, and that was over an hour away drive to my house. So I'd sleep a couple hours, get ready, and go back, do it again. And then I was so caught up in it, a weird kind of maybe insanity, that I'd go into my days off because they always called you, always called. Want to work? Want to work? Want to work? Yeah, man. All right. Then I'd stay. I'd do an overtime. Then I'm like, hey, you want to stay? Yeah. And I maybe caught a good hospital gig where this guy's just like comatose and you got to watch him. You got a partner. So he's sitting in Mass General Hospital and watching the Patriots game, you know? And this guy's not going anywhere. He's shackled to a bed and he's dying. So, yeah, I did tons of those.
Wow. That's a lot. All right. So you went back. So you were in corrections, you left, you went back at 47 years old. Why did you go back?
Well, at the time I was retired from New Hampshire, and I was a addiction counselor. I got into that, and I was working at a methadone clinic, which had pretty good hours. It was like 5:30 in the morning, 5:30 to 1, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I was out and the rest of the day myself. And I had my pension coming in from New Hampshire. I was retired. So, and I was going to college. I have a master's degree in master's in public administration from Norwich University. I got that when I was in Department of Corrections, New Hampshire. And then I'm like, well, I kind of like being a counselor. Let's get a degree for that. And I was paying out of my pocket. And one of the professors worked at Essex County. He was like second in charge there. And Mike, good guy, a great professor. He's like, man, what are you doing? You want to make some real money? And I'm like, yeah, I kind of want to. And he said, come work at Essex, and you'll start off max pay, just under the old sheriff, and you don't have to do the academy. I was like, what? Like, all right, but you got to pass a test and, lose some, I had to lose some weight. I was big. I wasn't running, I wasn't in the shape I should have been in. And so I'm like, all right. So I did that, and I got in, and there I was, and they walked me around, and because they did have an academy, but I didn't have to go to it. I would just do some refresher courses. But mind you, this is 2015. I hadn't worked inside the walls as a CO since 2001. That's when I left to become a probation parole officer in New Hampshire. That was a promotion. So these guys thought I was just ready to go. Here's some keys. Here's a radio. Here's a go get your uniforms, blah, blah, blah. Let's go. And they had me working up in the infirmary, which, you got your bedridden inmates and you got guys coming up for appointments. But you got all your lunatics coming in there that are in segregation cells that are, again, doing self-harm in a cell, naked or in a paper suit. That's where they kept all them guys. So I think they wanted an older guy, kind of life experience and that kind of thing. Yeah, I was up there, and I didn't know how to really work the radio anymore. Everything changed. Technology reports were written on a computer. I was trying to figure out that, like, how do you do this shit? And there's always a different lingo, everywhere. So it was interesting. Luckily, I hooked up with and everyone was so much younger than me. But I had some good guys that I worked with that kind of took me under their wing, if you will, and schooled me quick.
Yeah. Cool. All right. If a young person came to you and they said, hey, I'm thinking of being a corrections officer, would you encourage them, warn them? Or on top of that, if they said, yeah, I'm definitely want to do it, what steps would they take what would be the best way to go about it?
Basically nowadays, how to do it, just apply. They are so understaffed at these places, wherever, countrywide. I don't know I haven't heard of anyone that's just has too many, that's doing layoffs, really, and there's too many employees. Basically apply, but then I'd want to talk to them a little longer. Well, there's certain people that just shouldn't do it, personality types. And They just shouldn't. I mean, if you're a racist, don't go there. Don't work there. Although there is a segregation kind of thing in jails and prisons where you got to keep certain race, you got to keep races apart or separated. That's just a safety issue. But if you're a racist, don't go there, man. You can't apply there. Someone who's very timid. Now, it takes all kinds of personalities, obviously. You know, you got guys that are really good in control rooms. They're fast and they're good at writing reports. They're good at looking at cameras. God bless them guys. That wasn't my thing. I like being out there in the mix, you know, conversing with the guys. I found inmates very, very interesting, whether we were fighting or chatting or whatever. But takes all kinds of personalities.
I would imagine the dynamic that you experience as a CO with prisoners, there's not another job in the world that is going to be that, whatever that is. I mean, if you could put even a title to it, like, you're never going to have that kind of experience anywhere else.
No, and that's what I tell guys when they retire. I always tell guys getting ready to retire. We have a lot of clients that come in from corrections and law enforcement, and we got a wide demographic at our clinic. It's 6,000 clients, and that's who were my first clients, because they were just, you know, they needed some hormone replacement. They're just working themselves to death with the overtime. But yeah, it's definitely a wide demographic helps a place. You know, one guy can relate to another guy, or one guy speaks Spanish. That is like, thank God for that, you know. Or someone else who speaks another language, speaks a different language. There's always someone, there's a use for you, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
In corrections, there's a use for most personalities. I guess I was a goon at time. I was a big dude. You know what I mean? And I remember starting in corrections, and I'm like, I got to get bigger if I'm going to do this. And that's where really I get into lifting weights and put size on. And
so most prisoners, do they still have weights for prisoners? So, I mean, are a lot of them like jacked from lifting weights, or is it a lot of body weight exercises they have to deal with now?
I'm not sure about the state prison anymore. I remember there was a thing years ago, get rid of weight rooms and stuff. However, I was kind of I don't want to say a proponent of it. I'm like, okay, well, they don't have it. But I remember when they had it, those guys didn't tend to get in trouble. Because you got you got a write up, it's gone. You'll lose that for a long time. And yeah, so those guys, and if I was sitting at the desk, you know, working in the weight room, you know, at the state prison when I was a young guy, we just talked about, because I looked like I worked out, you know, we were just talking about working out. They wouldn't want to know about creatine and what was the new thing back then, and protein powders and stuff. But,
right,
you know, but in county, when I was working at Essex, they had a gym, and yeah, it was mostly body weight stuff. They had some cables, some usually broken. So they played basketball, handball. Some guys were into the push-ups, you know, dips, air squats. They'd run in place, run around the gym. It was funny because inmates do push-ups a little different than when I was in the military. You're doing up and down, all a full one, right? They would do these little half ones, quarter ones. And I used to laugh. I'm like, man, you're not even doing a real push-up. What the fuck's the matter? You don't know how to do them. Well, yeah, whatever, man. You know, it's just a banter. But come to find out, after getting into the fitness world, that they were doing it a different way. And where there's more tension on the chest. And some of these guys were jacked. They weren't big. Some dudes were genetically gifted, but they had big pecs and they had abs. And they were in the cells just doing it. They're doing burpees. I didn't see a lot of that. That's kind of a West Coast thing. But like, I do a lot of burpees. That's my thing. I love those. But yeah. And there were some guys very, very serious. And they didn't tend to get in trouble either. You know? They're just doing their time the best way to. A lot of it was just for up here.
What part of your job as a correction officer made you feel like the work actually mattered?
You save a life. And there's different ways to save a life, obviously. But yeah, I've done that or you hold a guy up lift him up. Your partner comes and cuts him down. And he's alive. A lot of them weren't. And then you see them later on, and they're doing okay for them.
Wow.
But you realize, and I think it's after I got older and I was a parent and I was back in this different system, that you have children, that's someone's child.
Yeah.
And they were just hanging by a bed sheet, hooked to something like a sprinkler head or a vent. And and you're not proud of what you did. You're not proud that you cut a guy down, and you're doing your rounds, and God of the universe, whatever you believe in, put me right there to walk by that guy's cell at that time. Because our rounds are staggered, and some guys, they say, these guys faking it, this guy's faking it. And maybe some of them fake it, but they fucked up and they killed themselves, or they cut up and they did a really good job and they're dead, just when you save the human being, you don't even got to like them. You don't got to like them after, but it's just, I think it's just for your soul's sake.
Yeah. Do you think that the words that you've said to anybody in the prison system has saved them from themselves?
I hope so. Me tell an inmate you're proud of them when they're leaving. Or I'd see guys out. I have clients that were inmates. They'll come back after all these years. I had them in the state prison. Can't really recall anyone from Essex County. Or I had them on parole. And they were a client of ours many years later. And they got out. They learned a trade. They have a flooring company now or whatever. Or plumber. Yeah, and we just you just connected. And my wife would be like, what was that all about with that guy in the parking lot? Like, yeah, we go back. Yeah, he said you were a good man. He didn't elaborate. I would hope that it helped. Because I'm pretty sure these guys have never been told that from people that were important to them.
Yeah, I mean, how many of them that don't even have a father, right?
Many. Yeah.
What is something cool or enjoyable about being a corrections officer that a lot of people might not expect?
Oh my God, the people watching is phenomenal. It is great. You see everything. Really do. Really do. Yeah, you think of the fights and the depravity and of the damage that a man or a woman can do to themselves. But really, you see, because you're always watching, you're on like in a podium sitting there, this plywood podium with a laptop or a computer there and a chair, and it's open, and you got all these 120 cells. No, I'm sorry, 60. Is it 60 cells? Yeah, in Essex County one. And you're watching, and you're hearing, and you're listening. You're watching card games. You're watching guys looking around. Two guys in a real serious talk. You listen to the guy on the phone yelling at his girlfriend for some more canteen money so he can buy some honey buns and some ramen noodles or whatever they get. It's just the noise is there. And then your radio's going off. And if you're on response that day, and I usually was, I would volunteer for it. If you're on response and you work a regular unit and then response go here. And then you just go and you run. You run. You got the canine guy behind you. And I was well over 300 pounds at the time. I really got big in Essex County. I was a shield guy when we had to go in on cells, but that required some weight. But it's just, the people watching is just phenomenal. The highs and the lows, the adrenaline rushes and the dumps. Like better than any workout I can think of, now that I think of it.
So it's almost like you have a great television or movie show just going on around you at all times that you can just sort of take a step back and like, man, interesting.
Yeah, for sure. And that's why your mindset has to be right. And you're bringing in an argument with you and your wife that you had this morning, and you're like, you gotta be clear when you walk in. You know, just like you
Yeah.
got to clear it when you walk out and go home.
Yeah.
And those kids are taking your time and they want your time, and your wife's going to tell you about her day because she needs an adult to talk to.
Yeah.
And you got to have that shit because you can isolate. It's like, you know, you can fuck alone. And I've been there. And it's no good for family life. And that's why it's such a very high divorce rate from
Is it?
my experience. Yeah.
Yeah.
God bless my wife.
Yeah, as an air traffic controller, I know that in our field we
Oh
have
God.
big divorce rate also. And I've talked about this before, but I think that a lot of times we go to work and you get very, very ramped and you're at this level like, and then you come home and it's hard to switch that off sometimes. And, your wife's at home or whatever, like, whoa, I could, and it's tough to become that home person. You know what I mean? From that work person. I mean, how did you do it?
Sometimes I didn't, or I drank, or if I did it, when I did it, you just try to think of something funny, and then see the youth and the innocence of your kids, and the way they look at you, and their eyes are pure. It's not full of rage. They don't have teeth missing. They don't have bad breath like inmates. That kind of thing. Yeah, you just try, and you go to bring them to their practice, and you're talking to the other dads, and with the dad group. I tended to isolate from them. I didn't want to I just wanted to be alone. I didn't want any noise. I just wanted to watch their game. I honestly wasn't interested in anything they had to say. And typically they would ask me questions about, when they knew where I worked, and yeah, I didn't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
So we didn't really have a lot of couple friends, if you will. If they worked with me.
No, I see this as in air traffic too. And I don't want to say it as arrogant either, but I feel like it's hard to get along with people that are outside of that world that, this person, I don't know, they're a computer programmer or whatever. Like they don't know what's really happening a lot of times, or the stress levels that a lot of people are going through,
Yeah. And from this business, we have you guys come to us, and you guys have to have us fill out paperwork for your superiors.
Don't get me started on that.
Yeah, that is a thing. And I'm like, Judy, what is this all about? This poor woman or this poor guy. And they fill out this thing and this and that and that and this. And like, holy smokes. You got to your whole life is their business.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I understand a little bit, like a plane could go down or something, but I don't know, man. Geez, you guys just don't get a break. And we've also found, not to digress, the adrenaline rushes and dumps, runs for anyone, right? Combat guys, air traffic control, whoever, right? First responders. It zaps your testosterone levels.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Think about it. These guys, people going to military, they kind of alphas, they get the high testosterone. When they go in, first responder, same thing. And at a point in their life, they're just feeling, I am just not me. They fall in depression, they self-medicate, whatever. And then we get them, we test their testosterone levels, their free T, their total T, and a bunch of other things. And it's low, like low.
Man, I feel like I should get mine checked. I know where I'm at.
You know who to call.
Cutting Edge.
That's right. But yeah, you just you're not with, and then then when you're with the like a soccer team party, you're just kind of not you're not involved in that little group over there, and you watch them, they're having such a nice conversation, they're laughing and this and that, and yeah,
it's different.
It is.
Yeah. All right. This just in, hot off the presses. I have a question here for you.
Okay.
that came to me this morning from Barry Black. He is an FBI agent, and he wrote a question specifically to you. And his question is this: what is the strangest smuggled item you have recovered, and how did it get in the prison, if you know?
Oh man. Cell phone in someone's rectum. A cell phone. Flip phone. Not a mini one. This guy was a pro. Obviously numerous drugs and all this stuff, but yeah.
Yeah.
This guy was not exit only. You know, he was a pro.
So
then,
please tell me it was a very small phone and not one
yeah,
of these
the cheap
big
flip phone,
big
yeah.
screen.
Still, yeah, it wasn't one of these guys, but there was this guy Richard, right? We'll call him Richard. That was his name, Richard. We didn't really call him by the first name, but Richard was his special. He was out of his mind, but he was our worker in the max unit. So basically, he was a protective custody kind of guy. He was nuts. So he couldn't have him out in general population. So he's in a max unit, but he wasn't really a max guy. So he was on this tier full of workers. We had a worker tier. And Richard would come out. He's a great worker. But Richard, he had a shelf life. So Richard, I'd be at my desk, and he'd just got done waxing the floors. And prisons, in the max unit, it was very shiny. Everything was waxed and shined. And, you know, I mean, it could quickly change anytime. But so Richard came out to me and said, Sarge, like, yeah, what do you need? I did it again. Like, oh, fuck. So what Richard used to do from time to time, he'd get a razor blade, you know, the Bics, and he would bust the razor so it was like thin. And he would put it inside his penis. That's what he used to do. That's what he meant by doing it again. And he would show me, and I'm like, all right, Richard, I believe you, man. You have a proven history. So he'd have to go out on the ambulance and all this stuff. And he's poor emergency room doctor would have to remove it. And he knew Richard. Richard would do it. He was getting a little tired of Richard, but yeah, he would do that.
Why, Richard? Why?
Why, Richard? Because he's nuts. Yeah, he's just Richard. But Richard, he would come back. You know, we'd lock him away for a while. And he'd be like, I'm ready to work. All right, Richard, you know, you can't fuck around. And, you know, and he was just we need those floors. We got an inspection coming up. All right, Richard, don't do it, you know. And he'd be on his regimen of medications, and he'd be cool. And it'd last a while, and till he'd do it again. Yeah.
I can't even. All right.
Yeah, the body is a remarkable thing. It's a remarkable. There's another guy. All right. SERT teams in. Remember the year 2000 was hitting December and then of 1999, and the 2000 was that hit January 1st, and the world's going to blow up, and all the computers are down and all this shit, right? So the SERT team was ready. We were there all night. Got to get ready. Might be something weird happening. The place might blow up. Who knows? So we're there waiting and waiting and waiting. And then we get the call, went to the H building. And this guy, big, tall dude, he was nuts. But he was in general population at the time. And he had taken Bible passages and put them in his eyelids and sewed his eyes shut. And yeah. And then we had to go get him. And then, you know, an ambulance came and all that shit.
My goodness.
Except for that guy. Yeah, I got a million of those.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to get more of those at another time. I guarantee it. Lottery question.
Yep.
I always ask everybody. So you're a corrections officer, 2018. Boom. Win the lottery. Filthy rich. You going back for your next shift or not?
Yeah, out of loyalty. Yep. Because if I don't go in, someone's going to get forced over from third shift or whatever shift I'm not on, you know? And then I would like tell them, hey man, this is it. I can't, I would tell them. I don't know if I'd go into the lottery because then they'd be calling me all the time looking for a handout. These guys, because they're all getting divorced, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, I would. I'd probably be in shock anyway, but yeah, I would. And that really, I'm thinking back, that's what my mindset was. It was I didn't want to screw another guy over who had to
Right.
stay another 8-10 hours in that place. Yeah.
All right. How would you say this job has changed you as a person, as a human being? Anything? Any effect on you?
Yeah. Well, let's see. Positives. I really got into weightlifting, working out. I competed in strongman a couple times.
Really?
So yeah, fitness. I'm cautious of people, in a good way, I'd say. And as a business owner, haven't been screwed over too many times. Also, this job, I give people chances because I was in a system that gave a lot of chances. Even within the walls, you're given chances. All right, man, don't do that shit again, or I'm gonna write you up, and you're gonna be in big trouble. Okay, man. You know, so you're giving the worst of the worst a chance. You can give people on the outside our chance. Like with our business, we hire talent, not so much skill or reputation. We bring them along, and we train them up. And that's how I think we've done so well. Let's see. How does it affect me negatively? Well, I had a bit of a drinking problem, but that might have been from childhood stuff. You know what I mean? I don't want to blame the job for that because they paid me. They were very nice to me. The administration, I have no Massachusetts, New Hampshire. I have nothing but good things. They were nice to me, especially when I was an older CO going into Essex County. They were cool to me. And also, another thing that has stayed with me is that life is very, very short. And meaning that I've been to too many funerals for correctional people. Typically suicides, heart attacks. Even guys that were working. One time we had a kid, call him a kid, he was 27, I was young too, and he was working a tower, rifle tower, gun tower. Third shift, lonely place, and he shot himself. 27, newer guy. It's just, this life is very, very short. The amount of people I've seen die these places and not really living life. And it actually, in a way, brought me to psychedelics. Now, that's a whole different thing, but medically assisted ones. I've gone to these places that do it, and just exercising my brain and using different parts of it and getting a lot of that stuff out. I just did my most recent one was Ibogaine about 6 weeks ago. I went down to Tijuana and did that, and that was like phenomenal experience. A very rough medicine. It's not recreational, but it brought me into a prison setting. It led me there. I followed some guy during this when my eyes were closed during my dreamlike state. He was bringing me to all this deprivation, these endless cells that were wet and the lights were out. It was gloomy and guys were hanging and killing themselves and cutting themselves and screaming. And I think it was all the stuff and all the people that I'd forgotten about that I witnessed do that. And I think it's just the way the medicine or whatever God, universe just say, hey, you got to respect. You got to still respect people. Yeah, you've made it. But don't forget that there's people out there suffering on both sides.
So do you think the Ibogaine was really saying, okay, you've seen all these things, and so, but you haven't processed them yet properly, and you need to work it out. And
yes,
maybe it was bringing you to that.
Yeah. So I had worked out the childhood stuff through other medicines, but the Ibogaine, and I thought like we resolved it ourselves as youngsters, young guys, dark humor, that sort of thing. I remember one time, real kind of a funny story, dark humor story. There was a murder in the yard. My first week as sergeant in the max unit. So I was still on days. I was that new of a sergeant because I was going to second shift, 3 to 11. And I'm walking by a yard, walk by glass, the day room. Then you can look in the yard, and shit, something going on out there. Don't know what, but whatever. I go out there, bring a guy with me, and this black dude named James was standing over this dead white dude, and a bunch of other white guys they were kind of Aryan guys. They had like swastikas on them and stuff like that. A couple of them were crying. There was a Spanish kid out there, and I'm like, what is this dude wasn't moving. I'm like, all you fuckers against the wall, against the fence, right? All the boys came, everyone's getting cuffed up, and blood everywhere. And this guy he's the only one not against the fence. He had, I think, brain matter or something coming out of his ears. He had a Nike footprint on his forehead, and he got stomped by the black dude. He was dead as a doornail. Big white dude, swastika on him. That was the thing back then. I don't know, but. And that came out during that a little bit. It was like a dead guy on a sidewalk, and it was the dead guy. But he actually started the fight, and the black guy, he beat it at trial, in self-defense. Because he was outnumbered by all these dudes and stuff. And actually, I had a good rapport with this guy. He was like a transfer from another state. But he never acted up with us and did his thing, but wrong guy. The guy fucked with the wrong guy.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, he came out and he was laying on a sidewalk. My brother who committed suicide was dead in it. I think it was just a respect thing. Yeah. And this guy who was awful to me, I think to my brothers too, when we were children, awful. Did some awful things. That's probably another episode or not. He was dead on the ground too. So that was part of it, but it was all these jail cells and guys screaming. And yeah, the medicine, I think, taught me to remember. This was a remembrance. Remember these guys, and life is short, and respect people. Even the guy panhandling, or whatever. They're all someone's brother or son. So, and fit that into your purpose. What's going forward? How can you help people more?
Yeah. Nice. All right, Tom. We're at the speed round now.
Okay.
All right. So basically, the way this works, I'll say some words to you that I found on the internet. You can say anything you want about them. Love it, hate it, tell a whole story about it. Whatever you want to do. First up, solitary confinement.
Unfortunately necessary.
All right. Body cameras in prison.
Necessary.
Ooh, the code of silence among officers. It says in informal culture where COs sometimes have to cover for each other rather than reporting misconduct. I think we kind of talked about that. What do you think?
Yeah, I think there's different levels to that. Like first thought, yeah, you shouldn't cover anything up. That's terrible. But first thought is things are getting covered up that are damaging to that individual, meaning so-and-so's drinking a lot. So-and-so's using too many prescription pills. And when I was there, that was the thing, prescription pills and drinking. Because doctors would feel bad for you because of your job you did, and you could play it up and you get it basically as many Xanax as you want. But that I think needs to be reported somewhere, like not as a humanistic type thing, not as get him in trouble, get her in trouble, but hey, I'm concerned.
Yeah.
But I can see where that would get turned around once that person is approached, and he knows who told on him, right. Instead of identifying the problem, dealing with the problem. So I guess there's no black and white answer to that for me. But something egregious, like someone bringing in contraband, things like that to a facility, that endangers everyone. So yeah.
Okay.
Telling it.
Parole revocation. I'm probably not pronouncing that right. Parole revocation for technical violations.
You don't hear about that as much anymore. Now, again, levels, but it depends on what they did to bring them in, to put them in prison. If they're a sex offender or a pedophile, and they're drinking a lot, which is considered drinking is a technical violation, right? That guy needs to go back because he is just kind of losing himself, and he could do anything, and it could jeopardize a child. I'd rather hear about it from bringing him back too light with something too light than hear about it from some family on the news who just lost a child's innocence.
Yeah.
So, and nowadays it's changed. They're not going to let you, like for a parolee, you bring a warrant, you have warrants, and a parole member has to sign it in New Hampshire. And you go bring it to them. Hey, can you sign this? They'll ask you what it is and stuff. And if it's like, if it's too technical, they're going to want to know the backstory. Is there more to this? Is there a backstory? Right? If you're just Joe, the old bank robber, he's getting out and you're busting his balls about, I don't know, something stupid. He quit his job. Tell him to get a friggin' job, or report into you every week or every day. You're going to test him a lot until he gets tired of that and gets a job, Yeah. So yeah, I guess I'm for and against, but for
all right,
average Joe inmate, nuisance to the community kind of thing. And you do get pressures as a parole officer. The cops are calling you, hey, bring this guy back, bring this guy back, bring this guy back. Cause we're kind of in lieu of a warrant, if you will. It's not really what's supposed to happen, but cops have to get warrants and all this stuff. But probationers and parolees, we could just, there's parole warrants, but then you can bring them back for certain things, just automatic before that.
Technical.
And so they would call us and try to use us for that. But so there's pressures.
Okay. All right. Inmate lawsuits against staff.
Oh, God. That's a thing. It's always going to be a thing. Litigious little culture they have. I was involved in some. One specifically, this inmate, this bad actor we had shipped to Connecticut, we had all fought him and he's attacked us. He was the one that got my buddies with the fork, the guy at the Chow Hall from earlier. And I had gone at it with him. I had to get a tetanus shot because of him, because he raked all the skin off my forearm one time. I was fighting with him. And he got sent off to another state, and he had all these lawsuits. And he did it basically to get a ride back to New Hampshire, basically. And he was suing all of us. And we had to go to federal court 3 times because there was 2 hung juries in it. And the third jury finally just said, yeah, you're beat, buddy. The judge was really lame. He was just useless. But it was very, very interesting. Now, I mean, obviously, some guys are trying to get out. They're bored. They got nothing to do, so they'll find a smart guy. He'll start a lawsuit. This guy acted as his own lawyer, so he was his own attorney. So I'm on a stand in a suit, and he's asking me all these questions. He's trying to be smart, and I'm just thinking, oh God, this fucking guy. He's a whatever. And I had moved on. Actually, I was moving on. I got promoted to probation parole. Funny, because this is during the trial. I had interviewed and I got the position, and I got a call from my new chief, Bruce, and he's like, hey man, congrats, you can start Monday. I said, well, I can't. He's like, what are you talking about? I'm gonna start Monday. I'm like, no, I'm getting sued by an inmate, a bunch of us, and I'm tied up in federal court in Concord, New Hampshire. I can drop the phone, I think. And it's like, holy shit. And he goes, man, that guy should be shot. I said, oh, that's, we don't want to say that. You'll end up in court too. But, yeah. So, many are frivolous.
Okay.
So, yeah, not a fan of it.
All right. How do you feel about this? Earned time / good behavior credits.
Yeah, good time, that's type of thing. Well, back in the day, I would have said that's bullshit, and they need to stay and do their time and flat sentences. I think Ronald Reagan came out with that. Everyone's doing their their time, right? But in a way, I found that it's necessary in a way because it's something for them to shoot for, and they'll think twice about before destroying the jail or the prison, the facility, or acting out against staff and injuring a staff member. And solely because of that, for me, is yeah, all right. So they get out a couple months early, or they get out a little early, especially a county bid. So you got a 12-month sentence. You're doing 9 of them, 9 months. If he didn't get it in 9, he's not going to get it in 12. But if he worked towards that and was on a working party and like painted some church or something, helped out the community, because they do that. They do a lot of work on the outside, the county jail guys. Or if it bettered society, I suppose it's good. Guys getting years off for their sentences. Yeah. Some of these states just overdo it. COVID was a big, but that doesn't have anything to do with this, but they were just emptying the jails in Massachusetts during COVID before these guys did any real, finish their time.
Right.
But for like serious offenses like murderers doing life bids, and I've heard of this, like California or something, and then they get out. Just let them out. You're supposed to be doing life, just because overcrowding or something. Well, all right, what's the real problem here? Why do we have so many of these guys in? You got to look at the bottom. Who's doing time? The guys on drug charges, well, maybe you can work with them. Less serious offenders.
Yeah. All right. Last one, privatized prisons. Got an opinion on that?
Never worked for one. Met people who have. Their motivation administratively is budget. Certainly not for the welfare of the staff or the inmates, really. And I hope I'm wrong, and I probably will be. I probably am, but I would think it's for profit, right? You're getting it's an industry. Whether it's you're getting tax money, or the inmates are doing a job. I've heard of them even having inmates doing telemarketing for places, or producing something, and maybe it gives them a skill, but someone's making money, and I don't know if they got society's best interests on their mind.
Yeah.
And now I'm thinking, why do we need those? What? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, you made me think of when you think about the Bill of Rights in the United States. I mean, I don't think a lot of people understand that they abolished slavery, but they left a little piece in there that said, but if a person's in a prison, well, never mind that.
Yeah. Now they brought themselves there, obviously. And yeah, they can make the license plates for the state. Sure. They do it in New Hampshire. They make when I was there, the protective custody, the PC guys did. So that was, I guess, useful. But like the big industry ones, the slave labor, I think like around here anyways, you might have a crew and they're maybe from the halfway house cleaning up the highway. Well, if I was an inmate, yeah, I'll go.
Yeah.
But as far as having a major industry, I don't know. I mean, they're getting paid, cents on the dollar, but it's a lot of money to them on the inside, and they tend to volunteer for it. Now, is there guys doing mandatory jobs they don't want to do? I'm sure. But in another way to look at it is maybe it's giving them some purpose.
Okay.
Inside. Because there's not many options, I think.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's the end of the speed
I know.
round.
There's a lot of ways to look at all of this shit,
All right. Great job, Tom.
Thank you.
That worked out. That was great. All right. So knowing everything we've talked about so far, in your opinion, would you still choose to do this career if you could go back in time?
Well, if I go back in time, I'd probably go to school more often. I would have showed up to high school. Yeah, I have no regrets about it. I didn't. It was kind of at the time low hanging fruit. I needed a job, and it made me me. At 58 years old, that is obviously part of my DNA. Really, is known for.
Yeah.
It certainly helped me in business. I'm a unique story and a unique human being because of it. There's not a
Who
lot
would
of us
you have
around.
been otherwise?
Yeah.
Cutting edge testosterone therapy might not have even existed had you chosen.
No, it wouldn't have. It wouldn't
Right.
have. If I wasn't home, had surgery and wasn't home, my wife came up with the idea, let's open a clinic. She had 3 other jobs going. She was teaching at 2 different colleges, and then she was in primary care. And she goes, I like having you home. And I was always going on overtime. I was always doing something,
Yeah.
I'm like, let's do it. And so we started with no clients and ran some of our buddies through the system and how to do labs and how to learn. We learned the business from a very excellent. He's our friend. He was one of our first reps from a pharmacy, and he schooled us through the business, and we educated ourselves. And and it's we're the people. Even my wife, she's the person she is because of I was in corrections. Maybe my kids are the way they are. They've seen the best of me. They've seen the worst of me. But they know that you got to do good in this world, and you can still have empathy, but there's right and wrong. And people do wrong, you can still help them out, until they get it right. Maybe they never do, but, treat them fairly with respect.
All right. Well, I hope we have you back for an overtime episode. Tom Casey, man, it's been awesome. I'm really glad that you came on the show. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Shane. It's been a pleasure. And I'd be glad to, man. I'd be glad to. Thank you.
Hey, you made it to the end. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the content, please like, subscribe, or leave a comment down below. And if you'd like to be on the show, email me at booking@talesfromtheshift.com. And I'll talk to you later. Thank you.